C'est bon pour toi, Sydney? Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first conference of the second edition of Design for Green Challenge. I hope you had a good night. You look tired a little bit. We're glad to welcome this morning Julie ORGELET. She's based in Grenoble and she's the CEO of DDemain. This morning she's going to talk about eco-design, a prerequisite to meet the current environmental challenges. So, Julie, I know you can hear her. Let's go. All right. Just a few seconds. There we go. Julie, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right. So basically, you've got half an hour, 30 minutes for the presentation. For you guys here in Angers or overseas, you can ask your question on Twitter, and we'll have some time a little bit after. Okay, Julie, it's all yours.
Okay.
Hold on. We're missing your PowerPoint. Okay, it's all good. Just full screen. In full screen.
I'm
perfect.
Julie. I'm an expert in eco-design, life cycle assessment, and circular economy. My job consists in evaluate and reduce the environmental impact of products and services, and especially for electrical and electronic products, and also of digital services. I performed in 2008 the first environmental evaluation of telecommunication network here in France. And DDemain, in order to share a specific vision of the environmental impact of electrical equipment and of digital services. To give some definition, because it's important to know about what we are talking about, and it's very IT for green, digital services, eco-design, and sustainable design of digital services, I think. First of all, here we are in this challenge talking about green IT and I hope more specifically digital services eco-design. Green IT is the impact reduction of the digital. On contrary, IT for green is the digital services used for an environmental impact reduction. That's to say, IT for green is not necessarily green IT, in fact. The approach I wanted to present you today is the digital services eco-design, and it's very important for me. This approach aimed at reducing the environmental impact of global digital services, and that is very, very important for me. It's to reflect, to think on digital service as a very complete system. And the next step after digital services eco-design is a sustainable design of digital service. And this approach is a more systemic one, holistic one, which consists in reducing the environmental but also the social and economical burden of a digital service. four areas are composing the sustainable digital, in fact. So it's very important for me to define these different concepts. The second point is that for the digital is one of the top contributors to the environmental impact, and we have strong challenge to overcome. Indeed, today in France, we are our environmental burden is more than 3 planets, so we are not able to live with only the resources that are available on the Earth. Humanity is living off credit since the 1st of August, and our materiality is increasing sharply since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. In 2007, we consumed the equivalent of 85 gigaton of resources, mineral one, biological one, etc., etc. It corresponds to 12,000 tons per habitant per year. In order to reach a sustainable society, the UNO objective is to reduce this material intensity to 5 tons per inhabitant per year. So we have a very big challenge. The digital is of the key to reduce, and also why the digital is one of the responsible of this situation. Today, in your smartphone, you will find more than 40 materials. And in order to manufacture your smartphone or your computer, you are responsible to the extraction of more than 800 tons of materials. It's very, very material intensive to build our digital equipment, our devices. And we observe that 60% of our devices that are replaced are still working, and 30% of our devices that are collected can be repaired. So why we are changing? First case, it didn't work anymore. Okay, we can try to repair or give it to a specific collection organism. But the second and the third reason are less comprehensible, I would say. The second reason is that my device is getting slower and slower due to applications that are bigger and bigger. So here you have a game to play in order to propose application software that are lighter and lighter and that allow to prolongate the lifetime of our devices, smartphone, but also tablets and also computer, etc., etc. And the third aspect is the fashion aspect, that lots of people want to change because new equipment seems to be better with a higher screen, etc., etc. From a more global view, we now know that the digital is representing more than 11% of the worldwide consumed energy. It represents more than 3% of the greenhouse gas emission. It corresponds to the greenhouse gas emission of the plane transportation sector, so it's not negligible. You will find more than 50 different metals in each equipment. These metals are extracted in non-acceptable conditions on environmental, social, and economical aspects. We imagine that in 2020, 12 billions of connected devices will be on the market. So it represents also a big environmental burden. And we finally observe that the increasing of data transportation on network is more than 25% per year. So the network will grow faster and faster. And today the network is used in order to see cats on the web, or also other videos that are not very necessary. And this use represents more than 70% of the use of the web today. So it's a very big issue. It's very important to speak about not about software, but on digital services, because that today we speak about software, but we develop more and more application software infrastructure on distributed architecture, and it's the development of the service software as a service model. Indeed, in the 80s, you developed one software which was deployed on one personal computer. In the 90s, the architecture client-server appeared, and today we speak about distributed architecture. And a distributed architecture, that's our end devices and softwares, and it's also developed by a complete ecosystem, and it has very good advantages. That's to say, you can use plugins and etc., but it also has drawbacks. We don't optimize the use of these plugins, and we don't optimize the resources that are needed in order to let our application function on the device. So there is a very important evolution of devices, from computer to smartphones to IoT, and an evolution of networks from 2G to 3G, 4G, etc., and an evolution of the architecture type. And that's oblige, or I like to speak about digital services eco-design and not software eco-design, because for me it's a necessity to have a systemic approach. So what is eco-design? Eco-design is a global approach that can be applied on products but also on services. But there is some principles. The first principle is that you have to have a functional approach. That's to say, you have to take into account the functional units of the services you will develop. The second aspect is the life cycle approach. You have to take into account what is passing in your company, in your team, etc., etc. But you also have to take into account what is happening by your user, the energy consumption, the resource use, the device use, etc., etc. The third principle is you have to take into account a multi-criteria approach. So we consider global warming potential, resource depletion, energy consumption, etc., etc., in order to be sure that if you reduce the energy consumption, you won't be responsible for an increasing of resource dependency. And for the moment, it's not the case. We are reducing energy consumption, but also we are responsible for material change, etc., etc. In our specific case of digital services, we include the global service in the scope. That's to say, the device, the networks, data center. And finally, it's also very important to notice that you have to include all the value chain. That's to say, you are the developer, but you will use cloud computing solution, etc., etc., or other software, and you have to challenge this solution and to take it into account in your final design. And that's the first aspect, what is eco-design. The second aspect is what is a digital services. A digital service is a device or several devices. It's a network, it's data centers, it's also several software that are allowing all this equipment to function together, and that also can be other services. So with this both definition, or you normally realize that why it is so important to have a holistic approach. In order to end this presentation, I wanted to present you an example. This example, you will able to find it on the white paper of the Alliance Green IT. It's the white paper Eco-Design of Digital Services. So, what Eco-Design of Digital Services, you have four specific questions to ask. The first one is the use and function. Before developing, you have to question the need of the final user. What is real need, and how he can use it as easily as possible. It's the first aspect. We often create over quality or add some not usable solution, and sometimes it can be very interesting to test the solution with the users, or also to question the final user on its need. The second aspect is an infrastructure. It's very important to take into account the device aspects. Are the performance necessary to let my application function very well dimensioned or not? And the other aspect is the durability. That's to say, how to what are the solution we can develop in order to increase the lifetime duration of the equipment and the final device, but also equipment in the data center, etc., etc. Sorry. And you have to optimize the software and reduce the resources needed in order to let the software function. And the last aspect is the communication. Communication through the value chain with suppliers, with customers, etc., etc. In order to be more concrete, here is the example that is developed in the white paper of the AGIT on an online directory. The need is to allow a customer to find an address thanks to its smartphone. And you have all the devices that are used in order to answer these needs. The smartphone, the interface of the application, the 4G network, the internet network, and the data center. Considering the smartphone, we take into account the manufacturing, distribution, use, end of life, and especially the impacting parameters are lifetime, use time, memory use, and volume of the data downloaded. Use of the network, the parameters are the volume of transported data and on which distance. For the data center, there is two aspects. The first one are the equipment, and we consider manufacturing, distribution, use, and end of life of the data center equipment. And last aspect are communication of the data center. So here we take into account the number, type, lifetime, duration of the equipment, but also the volume of stored data, of treated data, and the capacity of storage. And finally, the energy consumption. So when you know all about that, the good question to be asked are, how can we define the need and how can we answer the need and avoiding over quality? The question, what are the essential data for the end user? How many results are wished by the user by default, for example, for this directory? Optimization, how optimized the application is in order to ensure that the resources needed are not needed. How to be sure that the application works on ancient device. It's a very, very important point, because now we are changing our devices not because they are not functioning, but because they can open some applications. And how to reduce the time of use. Why? Because when you are using your smartphones or your personal computer, you are consuming energy of your computer, but also energy on the network and energy on the data center. These two first aspects are responsible for more than 50% of the final impact. And after a question about network, how to be sure that user can use this application on 2G, 3G, but are not necessarily obliged to use 4G or 5G in the next years. And data centers, how to reduce the quantity of needed service, or how to reduce that to ensure that the performance of the server are just adjusted to the need of resource. So lots of questions that are very important when you consider a global view of digital services. Attention, I think I'm at the end of this presentation. I have some questions.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Can you stop sharing your content, please? All right, great. Thank you, Julie, again. I haven't seen some question on Twitter. Do you guys have any question here in Angers? Feel free. No? All right. Thank you, Julie. The objective of this conference was to for you guys that you take into account the entire life cycle of a product or services. For the 48 hours and doing this challenge, you're especially focusing on the functional approach. But like Julie said for the last 20 minutes, is that you really need to take into account that eco design, be green. It's not only the code, so you have to take into account all the devices, data centers, and equipment, etc., etc. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll let you go back to your room and work on your project. I can see some Kaleo solutions are still there, Pôle emploi as well. I can see the Piggy the Pig are well seated. So hope you guys are all right. Good luck for the next hours, and the next meeting will be tomorrow for the second conference with Ines Leonarduzzi at 4 p.m. Good luck and enjoy. Bye bye.